Good morning, Muskegon, to all of you out there in radio, podcast, iHeart Radio, and computer land. This is I Am Muskegon, and I'm Jim Riley, here in Muskegon's Clear Channel Studios with my friend, the infamous Oscar Osbo, sometimes known as the legendary. And we've got serious deja vu going on here in the studio today because we have two familiar faces from last week. And this week, with their gravitas enhanced, I'm sure, we've got Captain Fred Birch back and author and Muskegon Community College trustee Sean Mullally. Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning.
Good morning.
And good morning again to everybody out there in Muskegon land. We continue our stranglehold on the #1 rating. And if you're interested in enhancing that #1 rating, give us a call. We are a talk radio show occasionally, and you can give us a call any place in the inhabited continents. I imagine if you wanted to call from Antarctica, that might be a little rough. But you can call us at 231-830-3109. Give us a buzz. And we were talking off air about some of the events that are going on in Muskegon. We will, in the starting at the 9 o'clock hour, we're going to talk about we're going to review this I think very important primary election from last Tuesday, and we're going to talk about how that will affect us going forward. But until 9 o'clock, we're just going to talk about items that are of interest to us. And we got chatting off air about the suggestion by some that water is the new oil, and that one of the grand futures that awaits Muskegon County is the development of the port facilities. And Fred's got some kind of a George Bushian smirk on his face. So
I was just wondering how we're going to use that water in our cars.
well, actually, they say that.
I mean, you can have a hydrogen.
Of course, the hydrogen produces water as opposed to using
hydrogen is also highly explosive, as you might imagine.
Well,
remember the Hindenburg?
It's also not an energy source. It takes energy to produce it.
That's right.
That's true. Yeah, actually, the net energy, and therein lies the biggest downside of all of the, be it ethanol or wind power, all of the energy sources, with the exception of nuclear and hopefully at some point fusion, is that it does take more energy to produce, other than the natural, God-given, if you will, energy sources that we have, which come right out of the ground. And anyway, but Fred, we were talking about, and Sean too, about this belief by some, and it really has taken over, it seems to me, the county leaders, the city leaders, and certainly the Chronicle is kind of almost giddy about the tremendous potential of expanded port facilities. They're talking about converting the Cobb plant, which is, I guess, at this point the number one taxpayer in Muskegon County, and will soon be closed because President Obama had changed some of the environmental rules, so it's not financially logical for consumers' power to continue running it here. So that spot, if things don't change, will become available for who knows what. Certainly destruction at some point, and then at some point perhaps just like the paper mill, some type of development. But what are your thoughts? Because there is a lot of talk about making this into a real show place for Muskegon County.
Well, as you might imagine, I know a little bit about ports. And I know a little bit about
Captain Fred, well, you are a fishing boat captain, as some have suggested.
But I mean, if you think about this logically, we do have a very fine harbor here that could be built up over an extended period of time, just because of the way it is. But you have to think about this from the stand of supply and demand. Okay, what are the goods that are going to move into Muskegon, and what are the goods that are going to move out of Muskegon? And is there a demand, a transportation demand, in this general area for goods? And do we have the infrastructure in order to build the port up? In other words, the railroad spurs or the highway transportation. Mm-hmm. Now, you realize, for example, I lived in Norfolk, Virginia for a long time, and they have tremendous port facilities. I mean, most of the coal of the United States, when it's being exported, goes through Virginia, and when it's being coming into the southern area, you know, they roll coal trains in through Norfolk that are just astonishing. You know, 300-400 car coal trains at a time, and it's like every couple of hours that they do that. Now, they ran into a big problem because with the container ships, how do you get the trucks down to the port facilities? And you start to look at what are the highway systems for the trucks to actually come in to put the containers upon. Okay, so I mean,
a lot
if you're
of
talking
traffic for downtown.
a tremendous amount of traffic, and so you have to start looking at the infrastructure around the port area. I mean, how do you have that built up? And what are the long-term plans for those things? This is a very complex problem, and it all depends on what is the demand for the goods, either inbound or outbound. Now, outbound, I don't see any dolomite mines, gravel pits, oil refineries, those kinds of things in the general area of Muskegon.
You don't think there's enough asparagus to fill the freighters on a regular basis?
There might be one per year if every asparagus farmer in the general area put their asparagus on one freighter.
Well, and this isn't a first of its kind proposal either. We have several, deep docks in the area. Particularly the Mart dock is a very short walk from this site, and we can look at the business they've been doing. Are their facilities overtaxed? Are they over capacity? I'm not sure that's the case at this point.
Yeah, and I think what really has to be done, but as Jim said, I mean, people are giddy about this. I think they have a right to be optimistic that there are things that can be done down there. But I think what you have to do is you have to be able to sit down and make long-range plans and then go through this step by step. I'm not seeing that happening. I'm not seeing the infrastructure being put together from the standpoint of what are the requirements, what are the processes and the resources that are going to have to be expended, and ultimately what the solutions are for all of these issues. I'm just not seeing it. Of course, now we're in the beginning stages. The question really becomes, okay, let's see how serious the governments are in this area about doing this kind of thing.
Well, and that site too, it has multiple assets to it, and that deep dock is just one of them. Obviously, the power plant facility is another, and if consumers isn't going to use it, it might be a white elephant at this point.
But by definition, the consumers said, I mean, and we're in the business. They said that we can't operate this according to the president's EPA rules. Nobody can. It's not like a different owner would be able to do so.
One of the other main assets at that point then is if that plant is going to be shut down, that site has a lot of high-capacity, high-tension power lines leading to it. And if you're looking at development of alternate energy, that is one of the main things they look at siting that sort of facility is where do we connect to the grid? Where can we put multiple megawatts of power into the grid without running a whole bunch of brand new wires? And you've got termination there where you can pump a massive amount of voltage into the power system.
Oh, that's true. Oh, that's an interesting. I had not heard that. I like that as an option.
Now, here's another thing. Jim, earlier you mentioned that. Well, gee, I wonder where we're going to get the dollars to do these things. And you said, well, maybe they're looking at a federal grant. Well, I think we would be not better off. We would be worse off if we started to accept money from the feds and built a port to nowhere. If you just build a port that then becomes nothing but a drain on the community for tons of years. I mean, I'm looking at what's going on with the high-speed rail out in California, for example. I mean, they've accepted a significant amount of money from the federal government. They've got to build a high-speed rail. It doesn't go anywhere. And it's pretty obvious to me that they're not going to get the customer base, and it's going to end up being a drain on their economy. I think we would have the same issue here if all of a sudden we started to, do that. We need to be very careful about how this development goes.
Well, I would go even simpler than that. As we talked about off air, there does not seem to be a line of ships, which you might have seen off Norfolk, waiting outside the harbor to come in and unload or to offload their whatever happens to be in the holds. The question is, like you say, this would be a port to nowhere, and it might, in the short run, just like these building of the windmills, it certainly would create some short-term jobs. Anybody who's involved in construction and marine construction would love to get a federal or a state grant. Certainly there's no money at the county or municipal level. But there is no need for this. And this is what's got me really wondering, because on Tuesday, the Muskegon County Board of Commissioners, some of whom freshly re-elected, they're going to vote to authorize something called the Port Rail Transportation Strategic Planning Committee to continue its work and to implement the following recommendations. And they've got a bunch of things, but they're talking about essentially some type of grand expansion of the Muskegon Lake port facilities. And again, to what end? And one thing that does very much concern me, because we've got some folks I believe have been extraordinarily good citizens in our community, and that's the McKee family with, my brain just locked on me, the port facilities.
Oh, the Mart Dock.
The Mart Dock,
facility, yeah.
and others, and they pay taxes in addition to providing jobs and providing services. Are we going to get a federally funded port that will not pay taxes, that will in fact compete with the port facilities that we already have in town? That's the only way it's going to be if they do any development, let's say out of the wreckage, the remains of the Cobb plant. And again, if there was in fact a shortage of port facilities, I can see maybe let's talk about that. But that's not the case at all. We have a company that does a fine job, takes care of all the needs, and of course, even if there was an additional need, the Cobb plant could be used. But I just don't see
it might be that there is a need that we just don't know about, and there might be a need that is being developed that we don't know about. But the real question really becomes, in my mind, is what are the alternative land uses? And how do you put the land to the highest possible use value for the city of Muskegon, and who makes those decisions? And that's the real question. Who is going to make the decisions on how the land is going to be used? Mm-hmm. And you know, I think it is perfectly appropriate for people to start putting committees together to investigate all of these questions that we brought up. My only concern is that we not throw a solution out there before we understand what the environment really is and what the requirements and the needs and all of those things that we brought up. Somebody throws a solution out there and says, this is what we're going to do, when in fact the assumptions don't make sense.
You see a parallel discussion happening right now in Lakeside about the former Sappy site, the site of Melching now. Mm-hmm. And there you have a very similar deep water port. You have a historically industrial site that
the new power plant.
Yep, and the new owner wants to maintain industrial. You have a general consensus among the residents. They'd prefer not to see heavy industry there. But you also have a general consensus, it seems, that we want some form of industry. We want it more towards the east, particularly where the Cobb plant is now. I wonder, is there any potential for a grand bargain down the road if you've got this site at the Cobb plant going unused and this site over in Lakeside, maybe some sort of swap with Melching? You know, you got a similarly valued property over here where long-term we'd like to focus industry, but over here in Lakeside, we want a little bit more residential, marina type stuff.
Well, I think that's an interesting concept, and I don't have any problem with that as it stands. But that's not what is being proposed. And Fred said, you know, maybe they've got some secret idea of some great ideas that they haven't told us. But therein lies, I think, the ultimate problem that we face here. Nobody, you know, these folks are operating in the dark with these grand ideas, and yet they're not telling us. isn't that kind of the case that if somebody isn't going to tell you
But that's
something
kind
fabulous, that maybe it isn't very fabulous?
Isn't that kind of Muskegon, though? That's what I'm saying. That is Muskegon. You've got great ideas, but nobody backs up why this isn't a great idea. Why it will
Well, they don't
work,
even.
why it will.
Well, you're right there,
Yeah.
but in this instance, they're not even presenting it. Their grand ideas is the ultimate fuzzball, which is we're going to develop the port into a shining star on the Great Lakes, and oil is, or water is the new oil, and there is communication
that goes into fighting for so long too, because nothing ever gets done because everybody's arguing the point because no, this isn't going to work, and I that's kind of Muskegon to me.
Well, it seems to me if you've got a good idea, then you should be able to come up with points. 1, 2, 3, 4. This is why this is a good idea. And I'm going to right off the top say I think that this governmental involvement at any level, certainly at the county level, their history of making decisions on investing money has not been admirable at any level.
I think though that if you sit down and you just lay the facts out initially, before you do anything else, these are the needs. This is the state of the economy. This is what is the port actually looks like. This is what truly world-class industrial ports would have to look like. All of those different kinds of things. And you put those all down on it wouldn't be one sheet of paper, but a blank set of papers, and said these are the facts behind all this stuff. Before you go out and start to even start talking about what kind of requirements you actually want to have, I think you've got to know what the lay of the land is, and I'm not convinced that anybody has done that. Right. It sounds to me like this is all reactive. These people are going broke. This property is open. Therefore, we have to do something with it. Let's do something with it.
Well, that would be my thought. And again, I think it seems to me if they have a logical, cogent plan, show it to us. If not, I think we're going to assume that maybe you don't have a logical, cogent plan, other than the fact that we want more federal money borrowed from the unborn children from China. So we will be back after this break.
I don't know whether.
I have headphones. I couldn't tell.
I'm not sure we know whether there's any federal funds involved in any of it.
Bad boys, what you want, what you want, what you gonna do when Sheriff John Brown come for you?
Call Bad Boys Bail Bonds. Open 24/7, 365 days a year. Agents statewide and nationwide. We do 10% bonds for less. Call toll free 866-728-6400. And remember, if we can't get you out, you ain't getting out. Payment plans available. Call now, 866-728-6400. Classic Computer Sales and Service. They buy, sell, trade, repair, and upgrade. New custom-built computers, 3-year guarantee, excludes laptops. Or your computer tuned up with more memory, hard drive, or maybe a DVD burner installed for $49.95. Need cables, power supply, or get the computer built the way you want it. You can do it at Classic Computer in their new location, 1921 Apple Avenue, Suite B. Call 773-5957. Classic Computer with hometown quality service.
Make a run for the border. Taco Bell is waiting to cook for you. Delicious tacos, nachos, chalupas, gorditas, quesadillas, or try their famous grilled stuffed burrito for only $1.99. Make it a combo for only $3.49. Their large variety includes specialties, combos, supreme, salads, and kids' meals. Taco Bell, the best fast food north of the border. So walk in or drive up. Visit all of the Taco Bells in West Michigan. Open Sunday through Thursday, 10 a.m. to 11 p.m. Taco Bell's open Fridays and Saturdays from 10 a.m. until 1 a.m.
And we are back at I Am Muskegon, Muskegon's #1 rated political talk show that involves all of you, or at least all of you who are involved, are interested in picking up the phone. Even if you don't have a phone, you can listen to us, of course. But give us a call if you're interested, 231-830-3109. We're talking a little bit about the possibility of expansion of Muskegon County or Muskegon Lake port facilities. And one of the things that Fred had suggested early on was, we've got somewhat similar ideas, be it a fast train or, as they call the train up in the possibility of a train in Milwaukee, the half-fast train. It doesn't go all that fast. But where's the money going to come from for these ideas? And, you know, if in fact, for instance, that there were ships waiting in line to come into Muskegon Lake and to offload or unload their goods, they would in fact be saying, hey, we'll build you a port. Matter of fact, we know that, was it China? Or no, it was, I believe, Saudi Arabia wanted to buy some of our port facilities down in the Gulf of Mexico. Not ours, but they were privately owned. And so, in fact, port facilities have been selling for record prices, somewhat like pro football franchises over the years. So if there is a capitalistic logic to it, then it will develop in and of itself. And this is, to me, the ultimate hubris that we see with elected officials, certainly here in Muskegon, because that's who we know the best, where they say, if we build it, they will come. And yet they have not, as again Fred had suggested, they have not presented any rational reasoning. It's secret. You know, they're so smart.
Yeah, I think if you want to get something like this going, you need to have the local industry and not put the cart before the horse. The industry is what drives any sort of cargo.
And we don't have that yet. We do have a phone call, so we'll take that right now. You are on the air, folks.
Hello?
Yes, you are now.
Yeah, this is Commissioner Jagger.
Well, Commissioner Jagger, good morning.
Yeah, all I wanted to say was, you know, right now, I don't think we're doing anything that would, you know, put more on businesses like a tax or a port authority per se. I would like to see, I don't like the leadership role at all. I think the businesses should be taking the lead in this thing. But we need to make sure the infrastructure is capable of handling things that come in.
Real quick before he answers that, can you turn your radio down just a little bit?
I didn't even get my radio on.
Oh, okay.
Well, it was just that. It was just that comment that fixed things up.
Is that what it is?
Okay. What would your suggestion be then, Mr. Jagger?
Yes.
Yeah. What would your suggestion be?
Well, I just think the businesses ought to be taking the lead in this because they more know what they need to do. You know, and what's coming in, because I think you are right. We're jumping way ahead. If we start like a port authority or something else, they can just see a big tax coming out of that.
Yeah, Commissioner Jagger, this is Fred. I think that's kind of what I was getting at when I said that what we should do is to provide a coordination role, not a leadership demand type of a situation with the commission. What the board ought to do is develop some kind of an organization, such as a bunch of business leaders, that can take a look at these port authorities, what is available, what the demands are, what the needs are, what kinds of improvements they might need, and help them to do some coordination on all of these things, and then to bring those things before the board and see if there are things that the board can actually do to help.
Well, what is Commissioner Jagger? You're going to make a vote on Tuesday. The full board will vote on this measure to take a lead, what they call take a lead on the development of this port rail transportation. Off the top of my head, it doesn't sound like a bad deal that you might have some coordination from the county. You know, that it embodies two municipalities and all. What do you see that would be a negative in this at this point?
Well, the leadership would only be the question, because I think anytime government takes lead in anything, we have a good chance of screwing it up. These businesses aren't really talking to us very well on this committee, so I think they like the behind-the-scenes activity. So, I mean, I just personally think that businesses lead the way, not government leading the way is the answer, you know. That's
an opinion I'm sure shared by most of the folks on the board with you, correct?
Yeah, right.
Yeah, right.
But I do want to say that, you know,
you got 10 seconds.
Okay, well, go ahead. You guys go ahead. But anyway, I'm just saying the leadership is a problem for me.
All right. Well, appreciate it very much. And give us a call after the break.
Okay.
All right. Bye-bye.
Make a run for the border. Taco Bell is waiting to cook for you. Delicious tacos, nachos, chalupas, gorditas, quesadillas, or try their famous grilled stuffed burrito for only $1.99. Make it a combo for only $3.49. Their large variety includes specialties, combos, supreme salads, and kids' meals. Taco Bell, the best fast food north of the border. So walk in or drive up. Visit all of the Taco Bells in West Michigan. Open Sunday through Thursday, 10 a.m. to 11 p.m. Taco Bell's open Fridays and Saturdays from 10 a.m. until 1 a.m.
Bad boys, what you want, what you want, what you gonna do when Sheriff John Brown come for you?
Call Bad Boys Bail Bonds. Open 24/7, 365 days a year. Agents statewide and nationwide. We do 10% bonds for less. Call toll free 866-728-6400. And remember, if we can't get you out, you ain't getting out. Payment plans available. Call now, 866-728-6400. Classic Computer Sales and Service. They buy, sell, trade, repair, and upgrade. New custom-built computers, 3-year guarantee, excludes laptops. Or your computer tuned up with more memory, hard drive, or maybe a DVD burner installed for $49.95. Need cables, power supply, or get the computer built the way you want it. You can do it at Classic Computer in their new location, 1921 Apple Avenue, Suite B. Call 773-5957. Classic Computer with hometown quality service.
Sail on into Crosswinds, White House favorite lakeside restaurant. Take your seat and enjoy views of the lake from the comfort of our dining room or the waterside deck. Our chefs have created a playful menu of offerings such as fresh fish, steaks, delicious salads, and gourmet burgers to tempt your palate, all of which are made of fresh ingredients from local farms. Refreshing signature cocktails and a food-friendly wine and beer list are also available. Boaters, call ahead and we will have your order ready for pickup, or allow us to deliver it to you dockside. As our guests, you can expect friendly service and a relaxing, memorable dining experience. So set sail to Crosswinds and let the breeze bring you here.
If you're enjoying the programming on Muskegon Television and your business needs a little boost, try advertising here. Just call 733-4040 and leave your name and number, and someone will get back to start you up advertising on Muskegon Television today. 733-4040, 733-4040. Give us a call today. The Harborview Grill is a culinary distinction in White Lake. White House Place to dine on mirrors behind Bell's Furniture. The Harborview is spectacular and the food amazing. There's homestyle Sundays, the day where Emil and Alice cook a homestyle meal from scratch, or cook and catch. Book a charter at Harborview Grill. Will cook the catch, not to mention their great meals served daily. Harborview Grill, where friends gather and memories are made.
How do you make a big noise in a small town? It's all about the food.
You put your table in, they take your painting out. You bring your linens in and shake the creases out.
That's how we do it at Colby's Hokey Pokey. It's hip, eclectic, and sassy, with 4,500 square feet of one-of-a-kind items like vintage furniture, jewelry, reinvented pieces. You'll find new ladies' discounted designer clothing, most under $20. Come poke around and don't be pokey. Hurry to Colby's Hokey Pokey and find the unexpected today.
You do the hokey pokey in downtown Whitehall. That's what it's all about.
Olson's has been around since Tom's grandfather started it in 1885, selling pianos, organs, and sewing machines. And let's not forget about steamship tickets. After electricity, they've been known around the Muskegon area for their name brand appliances like LG and Whirlpool. Olson's at 881 Laketon are open Monday through Friday from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. and Saturday from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. Olson's also has great flat screens, great prices, knowledgeable service techs, manufacturer warranty, local delivery, hauling away old appliances, and hookup. Need appliance repair? Call Olson's experienced and honest technicians for the best value in town. So call a local business that's been in Muskegon since before electricity. Olson's, a local name you can trust. 881 Laketon, open Monday through Friday from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. and Saturday from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. Or call 722-2458. Olson's.
The talk of Muskegon. News Talk 1090, WKBZ.
Well, you dadgum government, you sorry so-and-sos. You got your damn hands in every pocket of my clothes. Well, you dadgum.
Okay, folks, we are back at On Muskegon. We're talking urban farming. We're talking empty condos. We're talking potential development that needs paint. We've got all sorts of things going on. But what we do want to do is shift our focus actually quite a bit to this election, which was a primary election, not very well attended by Muskegon County residents. That happened just on this last Tuesday. And I wanted to ask you, maybe I'll start with Sean first, just overall quick, you woke up on Wednesday morning, you saw the turnout, you saw the who won, who lost. Any thoughts that grab you?
Well, the first thing I wanted to do was recognize the fact that as of right now, we are officially in the general election, so I did want to dress appropriate for you this morning, Jim. So I brought in something to cheer you up. So.
The taunting of the host is not fair, but I'll read it. It does have some kind of funky red, white, and blue circle on the top.
Yep,
and then it says Obama, who's I'm not familiar with who that gentleman is, but Biden. I'm assuming isn't he the fellow who's called Bite Me? But it does say Obama, Biden.
You might see a few ads from in the near future.
There we go. Well, that's a nice-looking shirt. You've graced us. I guess I'm going to have now. I've got my American flag shirt on. So,
but as for the
and we do have Fred Birch for county commissioner sitting over there with his Fred Birch for county commissioner labeled shirt. So, all right. Well, we are sartorially. Totally dressed up, ready to rock and roll. Okay, but we did thoughts on the election.
Yeah, as for the local primary we just saw, as it was reported in the paper, we did have, I think, to few people's surprise, a very low voter turnout. That tends to be a chronic problem with primaries. This one was no exception. It'd be nice to have seen more people at the polls. Looking at the numbers, I think because there was much more contested races on the Democratic side of the ballot than the Republican, just the way things turned out this election cycle, I think that's where you saw more depressed voter turnout. We saw about 7,600 ballots cast in Muskegon County on the Republican side, and about 12,000 on the Democratic side.
And I know of some Republicans who said that they weren't going to vote in the Republican primary. They were going to vote in the Democrat primary because, in fact, it was had more interesting choices with the prosecutor and the sheriff races, among others. But,
and I think that was a big phenomenon too. And the one thing I saw that might have been a measurement of that was the 92nd House primary, where incumbent Marcia Hovey-Wright was running against someone who didn't really wage any campaign whatsoever, and was just a name on the ballot. And Willie Walton was the challenger, who got 976 votes, which is up from, I believe, 48 votes, which she had gotten just 2 years ago. And
that's if she ran again, you can imagine if that trend continues unabated.
Well, your friend.
I think you're right. Yeah, I think that the folks did that. It caused some anomalies that really have no long-term meaning. But one of the things that struck me, and for those of you who maybe don't know the numbers, but we've got about 134,000 registered voters in Muskegon County. And that's out of a county of, about 172,000. So obviously there's some children in there and there's some non-registered folks. And I was asking, one of the things that kind of surprised me, it would seem to me that the percentage of registered voters would be a little higher with motor voter and all the voter registration information out there. But if you miss 2 election cycles, which is essentially 8 years, but if you haven't voted in 2 election cycles, then you are no longer a registered voter. And I think that accounts for some folks who have dropped off, who are in fact not registered. So our 16% turnout is in fact really worse than it looks. It might be the same at other counties, but in fact, some folks just don't give a hoot at all, even though they may have been registered at one point. But we had 21,400 folks who voted out of this county of 170-some thousand. And it's amazing to me because when people talk about why did we not, why is the turnout so low, and one of the answers that pops up, I think, far too often and is a huge misnomer, and I don't know how we get the word out, but one of the responses is, oh, well, my vote doesn't count. And yet we had 2 votes within our county that were ties and a whole bunch of votes county-wide and at the township levels that were, 30 votes, 2 votes to 5 votes. And we had actually one of the county commission races that was determined, I believe it was 21 votes. Yeah. Now, that's a big deal. 21 votes, difference, elected a new county commissioner. And in this case, it's Susie Hughes, who beat the one first-term incumbent, Scott Plummer. So there is a myth going around that your vote doesn't matter. And it just isn't true.
Yeah, I think things went about as I suspected they would. I did not expect that we would have quite that low a turnout. We were 72nd in all the counties in Michigan. We were 72nd in voter turnout. But it goes to reason that people will vote when they think that there are races that are going to make a big difference to them. And you can sit here and argue about, oh yes, this race will make a big difference in your life. But unless they see the relevancy of the race, they just aren't going to vote. And we can argue whether that's bad or that's perhaps good. But the bottom line is that those people that are voting right now are the ones that are driving the politics in Muskegon. Now that will not obviously hold true in the fall when we'll have a raft of up-ticket votes that are going to make a big difference to people, with the presidential campaign, the Senate campaign, those kinds of things. So I would expect that you're going to see a much higher voter turnout, probably, maybe even to the record levels for Muskegon in the fall, especially as the campaign rhetoric starts to heat up and people start beating each other up tremendously. But the real problem here is not so much that we had a low voter turnout. The real problem is that because of the low voter turnout, a very small population in Muskegon has driven some very specific solution sets to our problems. I mean, and some of that's the problem of the parties. The Republican Party didn't field all candidates in every one of the races. I mean, we talked about it last week with the sheriff's race and the prosecutor race, the drain commissioner race, all of these different kinds of races where the Republicans didn't even show up.
Well, let me ask this because you said something that really struck me here, Sean. Yeah, there are 2 issues, and Fred brought the second one up. The 2 issues are, one, I'm not going to vote because my vote doesn't count. I hope that more and more people understand that, in fact, one single vote would have determined two elections, and just a few votes would have determined many others. But the other one was, and Fred, you more artfully stated it than I will, but that people don't see even the results of these elections as impacting their lives. What are your thoughts on this? Because you're on the left side of the aisle. In many cases, Democrat voters are looking for government to do positive things for them. Is it the same thing for them? Because, again, only 16% turned out.
Well, saying my vote doesn't count, I would turn that on its head and go back to the old saying, if you don't vote, you don't count. And that is a very crass way of putting it, but the message is, if you want to have a say in how our community is run and governed, you have to vote. Not only because then are you choosing the leaders, but come next election time, all these candidates for office, they look at past voter turnout. And when they're trying to get elected, they will court those people that have a history of voting. And down the road, if you haven't voted before, they're not going to be as likely to approach you and ask you what you think.
Now, to me, that's an important point, because it's an added benefit if, in fact, you do vote. Just simply voting makes you more important to any elected official. And I'll just give you an anecdote that was told to me by an aide of a state rep a few years ago. He said that when they get phone calls or they'll get an email, but in particular if they get a phone call into the office, first thing they do, the staffer there has got a computer screen in front of them, and they'll get your complete name and your address so they know who you are. And then the first thing they check is, are you in the correct district? If you're not, they don't really give a hoot. And in fact, they say, thank you very much, call somebody else. The next thing they look at is, did you vote? And that enhances your their interest in you a little bit. Then the next one would be, did you vote in the primary? And that becomes very important, because as we're seeing here, these primary voters are very powerful. But let me go back to the Fred's point, was that people don't vote because they don't really see any connection between who's elected and how their lives actually are impacted. Do you see that in your side of it? I don't think I see it that much in the Republican side, but yet they don't vote in any greater percentage than Democrats.
I think there's a lot of cynicism out there, and a lot of people turned off by the polarized nature of our politics and our government, especially in recent years. And the more and more negative campaigning you get, I think, just feeds that perception.
Well, Oscar, you're what are your thoughts on this?
Well, that's kind of what I feel also when I go to vote. It's like, is it really going to make a difference? Because not because is my vote going to make a difference, but is it going to make a difference if I vote this person in or this person in? Because, like we've been talking about earlier, as Muskegon politics went down instead of going up in the last 30 years I've been here.
Now, what do you mean by that when you say Muskegon politics has gone down?
The politics, as far as, like I say, as far as the whole thing, as far as getting anything accomplished here in Muskegon, has been
the result of the political.
Moves have went down as far as Muskegon being a better place to live, as far as I'm concerned.
So what you're arguing, Oscar, is that there's a culture issue out here,
right? I don't think one person's going to make a difference, big of a difference.
People are not saying that it makes a difference to the culture within the Muskegon community.
Yeah.
And,
I just think the politicians that won.
Who we vote in, we're still going to have this culture that.
The politicians that won are not any better than the other guys. Are just better baby kissers and handshakers. So as far as I'm concerned,
well, and certainly that cynicism was really jacked up when the Republicans under George Bush had control of the country for 6 years. And certainly, if you didn't know, you would have figured that Bill Clinton had been elected to a third term with the House and the Senate on the side, so there was no difference.
I never was this way either until I did radio in Muskegon. I did radio for Muskegon for a few years and interviewed many people, many politicians, and found out that, okay, great, you got all these ideas you're going to do, you're going to enforce Muskegon, and Muskegon's going to get better, and you watch, I don't know, you just watch it not happen. And people fighting and people not agreeing on things and people not looking into the situation and finding all the solutions to the problems and just this is going to be great, okay, let's vote on it, let's
part of it I think comes down to our responsibility, and I use that word deliberately because democracy is not a spectator sport. Our responsibility to participate in government doesn't end with our voting.
Right.
I mean, you can't just vote for somebody and then turn your back and expect for their entire term they're going to. You have to show up at those commission meetings, the city council meetings, school board meetings. You have to be there to hold them accountable, to support them when you think they're doing the right things. And if you want to measure your impact and your influence you're having on government, look around the room. When you show up at a city council meeting, and let's say your city has 12,000 people in it, and there's 12 other people in attendance there, you've just magnified your influence as a citizen by a factor of 1,000 just by walking in the door.
Well, now what Sean is arguing is that we need to move away from this culture of despair or not caring to a culture of service, that people should feel that they are a part of the actual process, and that they are serving their fellow man or fellow women, by participating in the political process. Here's the problem that I see with that movement. Okay, how do you actually start to get those people who have, as you said, Sean, are very cynical? Mm-hmm. And cynical means, I had a person once tell me that cynicism is when a person has been there when the hope died. You know, everybody has hope, but when the hope is crushed to the point where they say it's no longer capable of working, the process is no longer capable of working, then how do you move that person from that position to this culture of service? And that's a very, very difficult thing to do. And as a matter of fact, the only thing that will move them from one spot to another is to start to give them actual results. Okay, they have to see actual results, and they have to see it on an extended basis. It can't be 1 or 2 or 3 times. They have to see it come back time and time and time again. It has to be a consistent series of results that come from the actions of the politicians.
Positive results.
Yeah, positive to them. Okay, and it has to be relevant to their lives.
We've seen this. We've seen this twice in the last 30-some years, and that was when really Ronald Reagan was elected and absolutely surprised people by bringing down inflation and vastly increasing the employment and the economy. And then when Mayor Giuliani I remember when he was first elected in New York City after losing to Mayor Dinkins the first time, and he was fought. The newspapers were screaming bloody murder when he came down heavily on crime, and in fact, very quickly was able to turn things around. And I think that's the key. It's the results or the lack of results, but too often we don't know what that information is. And I'd like to just recount to me, I think a terrible example of what goes on at the Muskegon County level. There was, at the county board last Thursday, there was a meeting where they ultimately voted to this 40-year water contract for the townships and the city of Muskegon. 40 years without an option out. I disagree with that particular contract, but nonetheless, they voted on it, and the townships, for the most part, did vote for it. Well, Mayor Darrell Page from Muskegon Heights, who's obviously heavily interested in water provision, attended that meeting. He took his time out from whatever job he had, certainly felt that he was worthy of someone having a certain level of respect. And he got up in front of the board before they made that vote, and he asked some simple questions. And he was told by the board chairman, or in this case it was the Board of Public Works, Marv Engel, that no, we don't respond to questions publicly.
See, there you go.
And my mouth dropped because occasionally they will respond when people do ask, but for the most part it is their stated and clearly stated policy not to interact nor respond publicly with any citizen. And here you have a mayor of a city heavily involved who just was told flat out, we don't need you here. Yeah. We don't need to respond. And now, I don't think most cities, as a matter of fact, I'm sure that most of the cities and townships don't follow that same way, but that was despicable.
Yeah. Well, and they had a similar episode recently.
There you go.
Mm-hmm. They had a similar episode recently when they had a informational hearing regarding the notion of fracking. Fracking for natural gas drilling out at the county wastewater facility. And there was a large number of people that showed up that wanted to speak on the issue. And the board had their procedural reasons why there was not going to be any public comment at that point, and I'm sure it was all in keeping with their procedural reasons, but that wasn't very intuitive to the public. And so all these people showed up just wanting to have a minute or so at the microphone, and they were shut down completely.
And to ask questions,
and they were
too.
very upset about it.
Yeah.
And that was just very poorly handled from a PR perspective.
I want to take this one step further on this. How do you move people from their lackadaisical non-voting piece to the voting piece? And I said that you have to make these things relevant. But the next step in this whole discussion is this is all about leadership. Okay, this is about leadership. How do people lead? And having been in the Navy, and I was known as something of a turnaround expert. And as a matter of fact, my first command was on a destroyer. I was given a broken ship, a ship that had been in the yards, over-toured in the yards for about 9 months. It had never passed an inspection in the last 5 years, all kinds of crazy stuff. And when I got on, it was like getting a Revell model of a ship, and they'd shaken up the model and thrown a bunch of pieces away, put some extra pieces in, handed it to me and said, here, put this together, get it out of the shipyard, and go take this thing, and in 6 months go into deployment. And the crew was broken. And they had nothing to believe in. They had nothing to believe in because everything that they had tried to do was screwed up. So the only thing that I could give them to believe in was me. So in order to get them to believe in me, I had to take chances, and I had to produce results, and that fell directly on my shoulders. And only after about 6 or 7 or 8 months was I able to get that crew around to believing in themselves.
Because you started producing results.
Because I was actually producing results. And that's what's really needed, both at the county level and in some of these townships that need that kind of help.
They're not producing
board.
though. They're explaining why they do the stupid things that they do is what they're doing.
But see, that's why you need real leadership in order to get these things going. Now, you can love him or hate him, and he was calling in lately on the board, but earlier. But Commissioner Jagger is a good example of this, where whether you agree with him or disagree with him, he is consistent. He is consistent in his thinking. He is logical in his thinking. He votes the way that he thinks. He is courageous from that standpoint. He is upfront, and so the voters, at least in him, can look at him and say, you know what, this is a good thing or this is a bad thing. I will vote for him or I will vote against him. But I'm telling you, from my experience with the board, every other one of them blows with the wind. They might just as well be.
Well, they all vote the same. You're talking about the county commission level, and they're in.
Will it make? It doesn't make a difference. Does Commissioner Alan Jagger make a difference? I don't. Really,
well, he does. I'll tell you
I
why
believe
he
in
does.
him, but does he? Okay.
I'll tell you why Alan Jagger does is because the information that he's been able to provide a fairly large group of people that never came out of this very closed society of the county commissioners has encouraged 4 other commissioners to run for office, and has encouraged many of the folks who are interested in politics to get more interested. Matter of fact, I will tell you, as someone who's attended the county commission meetings for years now, I used to be the only one sitting there, and there are more and more folks who are showing up, and there is interest. So one person can make a difference. As Fred said, it doesn't happen quickly, and you've got to have a few successes over time to really seal the fact that you are successful. But you can win by losing. You can win by highlighting bad decisions. And we're in hopes we might very well see 4, well, we already have 2 brand new commissioners that were just elected. I think it's clear that I love the fact that not so much that Anthony Longmire has been defeated, but the fact that the black community has said, we're not satisfied with who we had here for 2 years. The black community here in Muskegon County has not benefited, and we're going to vote for some change. I think that says an awful lot. I know we're coming up to a break, but I'd like to switch the conversation back to a little bit of conversation about the specifics on the election and how we think this election is going to change what's going to happen in November, and how what we expect it's going to change even after November. So we'll be back after the break.
Make a run for the border. Taco Bell is waiting to cook for you. Delicious tacos, nachos, chalupas, gorditas, quesadillas, or try their famous grilled stuffed burrito for only $1.99. Make it a combo for only $3.49. Their large variety includes specialties, combos, supreme, salads, and kids' meals. Taco Bell, the best fast food north of the border. So walk in or drive up. Visit all of the Taco Bells in West Michigan. Open Sunday through Thursday, 10 a.m. to 11 p.m. Taco Bell's open Fridays and Saturdays from 10 a.m. until 1 a.m.
Bad boys, what you want, what you want, what you gonna do when Sheriff
Call Bad Boys Bail Bonds, open 24/7, 365 days a year. Agents statewide and nationwide. We do 10% bonds for less. Call toll free 866-728-6400. And remember, if we can't get you out, you ain't getting out. Payment plans available. Call now 866-728-6400. Classic Computer Sales and Service. They buy, sell, trade, repair, and upgrade. New custom-built computers, 3-year guarantee, excludes laptops. Or your computer tuned up with more memory, hard drive, or maybe a DVD burner installed for $49.95. Need cables, power supply, or get the computer built the way you want it. You can do it at Classic Computer in their new location, 1921 Apple Avenue, Suite B. Call 773-5957. Classic Computer with hometown quality service.
Well, you dadgum government, you sorry so-and-sos. You got your damn hands in every pocket of my clothes. Well, you dadgum.
All right, we are back after a little dead air, but we have live air right now with
adjusting things.
Cat and Fred, Sean Mullally, and the ever non-dead airish Oscar Osbo. And your lovable little fuzzball of a host, Jim Riley, right here. Hey, we're going to talk about the specifics and just some observations I had and jump in as we go because I'm really not doing this in any real order. Mm-hmm. But the two biggest countywide races, the sheriff and the prosecuting attorney, I noticed that if you take they were three-person races in both of those, and if you take the combined total of the two who lost, they did beat the one who won. And this is a dream if you are an incumbent. And of course, Sheriff Rosser was an incumbent, and D.J. Hilson, as prosecuting attorney, was not the incumbent, but he was the anointed one by the current serving prosecutor. So he might be considered the incumbent. And I, for the life of me, I don't understand why we ended up with two folks who were running against these essentially incumbents, because anybody who knows, certainly experienced political operatives know that when an incumbent has two people running against them, it's almost impossible to overcome that. And I don't know if.
Well, I think you're assuming there might be more coordination there than is actually the case in reality.
No, I don't think there was. But I would just say that for Joel Dobas, his votes, his candidacy almost for sure guaranteed that Dean Rosser won. Mm-hmm. And the same for Steve Corwin. They both got significantly less votes, mm-hmm. and that was the result. No, I don't think there was any coordination at all. I just think I know that when in my race I did end up losing, but my fear was that a third person would enter in because mm-hmm. again, when you've got a popular incumbent and two challengers, those two they mm-hmm. challenge the I don't like the incumbent vote, and that's just standard political strategy, mm-hmm. and nonetheless that happened. But I'd like to take a look at the judge races, or actually, Fred, you're making facial expressions that suggest to me you have a thought.
Oh, I was going to say that I think you saw that same dynamic in the Senate primary for the Republicans. Over a long period of time, we had a very crowded field, and Hoekstra entered that race. Even though he wasn't the incumbent, he certainly had the name recognition across the state, having run for governor and being a longtime congressman, and there was no overcoming that in the end, and primarily I think it was because people split off, and as their candidates dropped out, they naturally gravitated toward Hoekstra rather than to one of the other candidates, and only at the very tail end, as I predicted, did Gary Glenn drop out, start to support Durant, and Durant started to come on strong, but it was just way too late in the game for him to overcome that,
you had
massive lead that Hoekstra had.
You had the I like Pete group, and then you had the I don't like Pete group, and right. They all split it and fragmented it.
So very much similar to what you were talking about.
Mm-hmm. Well, let's move over to the judge, the court race, because that continues on now. And I was speaking with some of the county clerks, or some of the clerks within the county, and a fair number. If you looked at the what they call spoiled ballots or crossover ballots, which are essentially ballots that did not get counted because people double voted. They mm-hmm. either voted in the for both a Republican and a Democrat, or voted for two judges, and those votes were not counted. But we ended up with two. Ray Kostraba, who was the top spender, I believe, of all of those, had big billboards and a tremendous number of signs. And Annette Smedley, who also had a huge number of signs. And those two will go at it come November. I would imagine that if I was Annette Smedley, I would be out raising money like crazy and trying to secure billboards and other things, because it does seem, I don't think most people know who Ray Kostraba was, other than the billboards.
I think that advice is apt for both of them. To be
well, I'm sure he'll do that because he's already
as much as they can
proven
at this
it.
point.
But I disagree. I think many people did know who Ray was, particularly based on his last race. He had wide name recognition across the county.
Well, both had run before, Ray 2 years ago and Annette 4 years ago.
Right, but Ray essentially has been running he's been running the race for 4 straight years, and so he has big name recognition across the county. And I think far more name recognition than Annette Smedley does. Although, yeah, she certainly does. And she was very effective, as I anticipated she would be, with her swarm of signs that was out there. I mean, she did a great job from that perspective. And you can argue whether signage is the way to go. I doubt whether it will have that much of an impact in the fall. I think I'm on board with, boy, she better be raising money. I'm not so sure about the billboards. I think much more effective is trying to get a message out about what you're all about. I think that the biggest thing for the fall race is going to be, how do you actually do the communications with the people? Do you get on radio? Do you have participating rallies? There ought to be some way for those candidates to get their core message out to the people, so that they can see what the differences are. And I would suspect that if Annette is not capable of doing that, if she can't get on the radio or talk to people in large groups or somehow do some mass communication, I think that Ray is going to swamp her again.
Well, in a countywide race, that's the challenge. And some of these other races, you have much smaller districts, and a candidate can go to every single household, knock on the door, and introduce themselves.
Yep.
Countywide race, you're mostly looking at mass media.
Of which we have little.
Yeah, your radio. We don't have local TV stations. We've got a couple of cable stations, and the print media. But I think you're right. Looking at these numbers, Ray's very much far and ahead above the rest, and it's from Annette's point of view, going to be up to her to change those numbers.
Yeah.
Well, a lot of people, I'd like to just, as a point of information, a lot of people say we've got to get the money out of politics, and certainly at the presidential and the Senate level, it's a different situation. But at the lower level, one of the ways that I think money does matter, and one of the ways that why it is important is that if you in fact have a solid message, you're going to approach folks who do have money, and it might be in the form of $10 and $15 and $20 attending your fundraiser, or it might be larger checks elsewhere. But if you've got a solid message and you've gone to some of the movers and the shakers, the people who do have money in the county, and you've convinced them that you are a worthy candidate, I think that's good. I think the fact that I'm against the person who raised the most amount of money as a knee-jerk reaction is incorrect. Money tells a story. It says that someone is convinced enough to give a candidate money, that they are worthy of their support, of their financial support. So, I in some cases, you might argue that they're being purchased or what have you. In other cases, someone has just been a very articulate advocate for their candidacy.
Now, here's another question: is where does that money come from? Okay, now Kostrava had $37,000 at the
a significant amount, yes.
And I have been told that a significant amount of that money came from a source. So the question then becomes, okay, is that something that you can leverage if you're Annette Smedley? Is there something that you can leverage about the fact that Ray has accepted money, a significant amount of money from one source?
Well, I think the value
That's
of
a good point.
The value of money in campaigning is indisputable, and I'll agree with you to a degree, Jim, that it does it does show evidence of support. I think it's more meritorious if you can show a large collection of smaller, modest donations coming from a broad range of people than perhaps if you have, one or two large backers and that's it. Because it shows you have the grassroots.
Well, it shows, although that also takes a lot of organization, too, and I tend to agree with you. And Barack Obama really excelled in that in the last election 4 years ago. And that was an indication that he connected with the little people, if you will. It's not quite the same this election, at least at this point, but we're going to find out. Let's move on to some of the other elections, which I guess the next biggest one would have been these 4 county commission races. And I did find it interesting that we had 4 county commissioners who were up for election, and 2 lost, and 2 won. A first-termer in Scott Plummer, as we mentioned, lost to Susie Hughes, both of them Democrats.
Very close election.
In a 21-vote election.
Those results came in very late in the night. I think they were counting them carefully.
And it's funny, I did ask about that because we were all trying to figure out what was going on there. And I did speak with one of the candidates afterwards and was told that the clerk at Muskegon Township said, look, this is a close election. We're going to double count and perhaps even triple count before we submit that. So apparently there is no question at this point of a recount. And so they did it right. They didn't just zip it through, and it made us stay up late, but that's okay. That worked out well. But the very interesting, we have Charles Nash, who's now back. He been on the county commission board before. He defeated an incumbent, Anthony Longmire. And again, the people have spoken in that they want somebody new. So I find that interesting because we don't often have a big change, and we did actually 2 years ago. We had 5 new county commissioners. There seems to still to be a grumbling nature, and to have this happen in the primaries tells me that maybe there is, in my case, hope for some change and hope for more clarity, hope for more communication with the community. Jim Derazinski, who is a long time county commissioner, had a relatively tough fight, but won handily over his Democrat challenger. So he will ultimately, in November, be facing Alan Jagger, which I think those 2 guys are 2 of the best of the commissioners. I'm sad to see that fight. And then Bob Skolnick squeaked out a victory over your lovable host Jim Riley in Norton Shores. But so there's I don't think there's anything really to be gleaned from the county board race at this point, except that we do have 2 locked-in new commissioners, Susie Hughes and Charles Nash, and 3 actually, and Bob Skolnick. So they're done.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what they do with the positions. And I mean, Susie Hughes, it'll be her first time on there. Charles Nash is his second. A lot of his term, the first time he was on, he was also running for another position, so I'm not sure he was able to give it his full attention. This time it'll be interesting to see what he does.
Well, I would hope that as a matter of fact, one of the things we're going to talk about on our next Sunday show is the low turnout and what we can do maybe to increase that. And I think, as both of you suggested, that one way to increase the turnout is to let the voters know how these folks have voted in the past, and give some information. I know that I felt almost helpless when the judge races came, because it was so hard to find information other than the fact that they were all experienced, attractive, nice guys and gals. It was awful tough to cull one out from the herd other than billboards and signs. And we will take a break to pay for our show, and we'll be back shortly.
What you want, what you want, what you gonna do when Sheriff John Brown come for you?
Call Bad Boys Bail Bonds. Open 24/7, 365 days a year. Agents statewide and nationwide. We do 10% bonds for less. Call toll free 866-728-6600. 6400. And remember, if we can't get you out, you ain't getting out. Payment plans available. Call now, 866-728-6400. Classic Computer Sales and Service. They buy, sell, trade, repair, and upgrade. New custom-built computers, 3-year guarantee, excludes laptops. Or your computer tuned up with more memory, hard drive, or maybe a DVD burner installed for $49.95. Need cables, power supply, or get the computer built the way you want it? You can do it at Classic Computer in their new location, 1921 Apple Avenue, Suite B. Call 773-5957. Classic Computer with hometown quality service.
Make a run for the border. Taco Bell is waiting to cook for you. Delicious tacos, nachos, chalupas, gorditas, quesadillas, or try their famous grilled stuffed burrito for only $1.99. Make it a combo for only $3.49. Their large variety includes specialties, combos, supreme salads, and kids' meals. Taco Bell, the best fast food north of the border. So walk in or drive up. Visit all of the Taco Bells in West Michigan. Open Sunday through Thursday, 10 a.m. to 11 p.m. Taco Bell's open Fridays and Saturdays from 10 a.m. until 1 a.m.
You dadgum government, you sorry so-and-sos. You got your damn hands in every pocket of my clothes.
And we are back at On Muskegon. Captain Fred, Sean Mullally, the ever-present Oscar Osbo, and Jim Riley. Sitting here as your happy host. Elections are over for the time being. The campaign just begins again for November. Sean, you mentioned a comment off air about the North Muskegon district, if you will, Laketon, for the county commissioner.
Yep, as we're going through the county commission results, there was one other one that was a little bit interesting. It was just a primary, not a decisive one for the general. But the 8th district, we had Terry Sabo and Chuck Woods competing, and of course John Snyder, the incumbent, on the Republican side. But that was a fairly close race, and it was they were both very active out there on the campaign trail. And I think as a result, you had North Muskegon and Laketon Township, the bulk of this district, had the highest voter turnout in the county. And I attribute some of that to this very active campaign they had, and both of them trying to get that voter turnout. Sabo came out on top. I was sitting in the room on election night with both of them, and a number of other people watching the results. And as the different precincts are reporting in, first Sabo was ahead, and then actually all the precincts had reported, and they had the final numbers of Sabo winning. About 20 minutes later, the numbers mysteriously switched. And
oh, really?
Yeah,
I did not notice
and
that.
Chuck
That's
Woods was
interesting.
on top
Okay.
again with all the precincts reporting. So it was reporting as the final results. So you had one side of the room was cheering, and then all of a sudden they got a little bit quiet and apprehensive, and then the other side of the room was cheering. And it turned out someone down at the county building had pressed the wrong key, and they did finally get the proper numbers with Sabo on top. But there was some confusion there for a while.
Hey, speaking of that, though, I would like to say that, I think our county does a pretty good job of getting the results out on the computer.
I agree.
I think they do a doggone good job.
It's a pretty smooth system. Yeah.
And so I'd just like to put a plug in for them.
Mm-hmm. Well,
even though they did have this one mistake.
Well,
but it was cleared up quickly.
They're dealing with enormous amounts of data, and I do like the fact that one of my bigger complaints was how late the Muskegon Township information came out. But in fact, we now know, number one, it was a township issue, and number two, it was a very good township issue. So I would agree. What I found interesting, in addition, was the fact that Norton Shores had, 8 of the top 10 of the spoiled ballots and crossover ballots that weren't counted. I know that the county clerk, I spoke with Clerk Nancy Waters, and she indicated to me that, with the exception of the city of Muskegon, the clerk's office trains all the other clerks, and then the city clerks and township clerks go out and they then train the various, be they volunteers or the folks that are hired for election day. And it was a confusing ballot. I would hope, I would really point the finger at our Michigan State Secretary of State, Ruth Johnson. This was a miserable ballot. It was very, very easy to make a mistake. the results were that we had, think about this. We had 20-some thousand votes and over 1,000 ballots that were not counted for a variety of reasons. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's huge. That's people who went out, took the time to vote, and in fact their ballots didn't count. I would really hope that our Secretary of State, Republican Ruth Johnson, who by all my information is doing a pretty good job, but this was a really crummy ballot.
Yeah, just wait for the fall. It's going to be a very crowded ballot, and
but
I
it'd be
hope
different.
they design it better.
But the difference is that you can cross over, and you're not going to have the spoiled ballots in the level that we had. There were two easy ways you could spoil your ballot. One, on this case, one by voting for more than one judge, and two by voting for a Republican and a Democrat.
Well, and on top of that, if you looked at the two columns, and then there was a third column for the judge line, which was just, I was looking at it going, this is really strange.
Well, and some of the poll workers were saying, I forget what the terminology was, but they led voters to believe that you could only vote in one of the columns.
Right.
Not
that was my
pointing
point,
out the fact that the judge column you had to vote. It certainly would have made it simpler to put it on the back. I can understand the argument why you might not want to put it on the back, but it was a horribly crafted ballot.
Well, and it was a common misconception among a lot of people I talked to, too, when it came to the judge race that, well, you can vote for two, right? Well, because everybody understood there's going to be two winners.
Absolutely.
And in any other race that has two winners, you vote for two.
Yes.
But that was not the case here, and I think a lot of people only figured that out when they had the ballot in front of them, and some maybe didn't even figure it out then and spoiled the ballot.
Yeah, and I think it would have been very illuminating if folks could have voted for two. Mm-hmm. It certainly might have changed the ultimate result. I don't know if that's a state law or otherwise. Well, okay, let's take a look here. Now, one final question. The gentleman who needed, and I don't have his name right in front of me, who needed the write-in.
For congressional. Yes,
Willie
German Jr.
Willie German, okay.
He got him.
Oh, he did get enough.
Yep. They were shooting for 1,500. The bare minimum was a little over 1,000. They wanted a margin of error. And I believe just out of Muskegon County, if I recall the numbers, he got like 1,900. And
so he got enough so that in
several
fact,
more from some surrounding
Bill
counties.
Huizenga will have a challenger. Okay, well, good. I think that's good. I hate the concept of folks who are running unchallenged.
I just like seeing any ballot with just one option on it. It doesn't seem like a democracy.
Well, I think it fills the mind of the candidate and his campaign with thoughts of invincibility that I don't believe that they ought to have within themselves. So,
well, and you could say something similar about both of our counties' state representatives, both got nominated in their primaries without much effort. Holly Hughes and Marcia Hovey-Wright, but they did face challengers. I'm not sure that the vote turnout represents a really strong showing for the challengers. I think both of them were reelected by their respective parties with pretty strong support. But they're gonna both face general elections, and we'll see how those turn out.
Well, okay. Let's in the small amount of time we've got left. Let's start with Fred. The results of this election, is Muskegon County going to change, or anything that you can draw from this election that we just had?
Yeah, I think change is in the air. I think incumbency is going to be challenged in the fall. I think it's going to be a tough year for incumbents. I think that you're going to see a base turnout election where the bases are going to come out very, very strongly. The question really becomes, how much over the base is the turnout going to be from the standpoint of where the votes are going to be going. I think you're going to see some very highly contested races in the fall. I think mine is going to be one of them.
You're running for county commissioner, and you're running against the county board chairman, Ken Mahoney. Okay.
Yeah. So I think that there's a lot of change is actually in the air. and we'll see how much of that is going to manifest itself. But we've already got 1/3 of the Board of Commissioners elected.
Right.
That's something that you need to remember, and at least one of those people is certainly going to be making some changes on the board. The dynamics of
well, two of the three are new.
Right,
So
exactly. But so yeah, I think we're going to see some change.
Sean, your thoughts?
I think it's going to go race by race.
Well, how about the county, though? How is this going to change? We just had this election. How is this going to change Muskegon County going forward?
Well, I think you're going to see some incumbents hold on, and I don't expect to see any change in our congressional seat. I think Huizinga is probably going to be in again. I think Marsha Hovey-Wright's going to be in again. Some of the more swing districts, like Holly Hughes's, some of the county commission races, you might see some turnover. And it's, I think, going to come down to the individual office holders and how satisfied their constituents are with them. I think people do, especially the smaller the district, the more local the office, they vote the person because in many cases they know them.
Well, I think that's very true. I'll add my 2 cents to this, and again, if you look at the two biggest countywide races, which were the prosecutor and the sheriff, you had more people vote against the ultimate winner. So even though the citizens of our county did stick with the tried and true, if you will, the people don't seem to be thrilled with the direction that Muskegon County is going. We have a turnover of 4 county commissioners who ran, 2 are gone. We have a fair number. Actually, I was surprised, as you say, some of the non-competitive, the state rep races still had a fair number of people who took the time to come out and vote in against the ultimate winner. And I see this as good news. I see that the people are getting more involved. Now, the bad news, of course, is that such a tiny percentage are out there interested. And that's what we're going to focus on next week. We are going to focus on two points. One, what are the reasons why people chose not to vote? Why do we have such a pathetically one of the worst in the state turnout? But more importantly, and we're going to focus more time on this, what are the ideas? And we're going to have a little roundtable. What are the ideas that different people have that can bring people out? So first off, we're going to try and find what are the reasons? Why did you not vote? And then we're going to come up with some answers that might encourage people to vote coming forward.
Might also at least explore the question about whether we really should expend our efforts on getting more people to vote.
This is WKBZ Muskegon and WOOD HD2 Muskegon.
Are we still back? Okay. Well, Fred, there was a grand fear here that Fred would get long-winded, and that did not happen. So next Sunday, as we said, we will look at the elections, focus on why voter turnout's low, and some ideas that bring the informed voter back. We don't want to bring the uninformed voter back. You might as well stay home and watch television. Don't forget, you can listen to this show on IonMuskegon.com anytime. We'll be back next week, folks.